Welcome back to the Kelly Roach Show. I have the dream team, Kyle and Ariel, here from Couplepreneurs today. Hey guys, I'm so happy to have you on the show today.
We're so happy to be here. Thanks for having us, Kelly.
I'm so happy to have you both here because one of the things that I am on a mission to do is to really bring the conversation about marriage back into this entrepreneurial space. And you guys do something really unique and really powerful, which is you help couples learn how to own their roles in business together, how to work together, how to love and build their marriage while building their businesses. And I'm just so happy to have you here to not just talk about that, but I actually think that the things that you teach people in your programs and with your clients actually relate to everyone, even if they're not in partnership with their spouse in business. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about like your journey and how this forged, because you guys each initially both had separate businesses, yeah? And then you came together as a couplepreneur and launched this brand. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for Kyle and I specifically, it all started with what we call the anti-honeymoon stage. So you know how most people, when they get married, they have a honeymoon stage. We had the complete opposite. So for us specifically, both of us came from what I would call humble beginnings. We grew up in a small town in the middle of cornfields, and we actually dated for 7 years before we got married. And during those 7 years, like you said, we both had separate businesses during that time. And by the blessing of both of our businesses, we were able to self-fund our dream wedding in the Bahamas. And that day when we got married, you know, we dated for a while up until that point. We thought things were only going to get better from there, as I think many couples do when they get married. But that's not exactly what happened for us. In fact, we very quickly became so focused on our individual pursuits that we really started to neglect our relationship. And this was just shortly after we had gotten married. So we actually were experiencing tension like the month after our marriage for the first time really in our relationship at that point. And if I can be so bold, the biggest tension point for us specifically at that time was Kyle thought the solution to some of the stress we were experiencing was for me to just be his assistant.
Yeah. And as you could tell by, I know this is like stupid husband logic, but I thought that was the right move because if you could imagine waking up and sharing a breakfast, lunch, and dinner with somebody, and all you're talking about is business and the complexities of running marketing campaigns and trying to divvying up our time and try to figure out like, whose time is more valuable to focus on business while the dishes and the laundry need to be done. We're just trying to navigate this. And we really didn't have anybody else out there that could tell us like, hey, don't do this. Here's the better way to run a couplepreneur relationship. So yes, admittedly at the time, as embarrassing as it is to say, I thought the solution was to have Ariel just come alongside my digital marketing consulting business and be my assistant. And that caused even more tension, because Ariel is a true blue entrepreneur. And I'll never forget the day that changed our entire life. Once we got to the peak of conflict where we just could not see eye to eye, I was in a guest room in our house, literally praying out to God on my knees, just asking for a solution. Because we knew we didn't want to sacrifice our calling in business, but we especially didn't want to sacrifice our calling in marriage either. So like, what do you do? How do you navigate being two entrepreneurs in one relationship with two different visions and two different ideas of how life should go? So I remember just praying out to God. I got off the bed and I did what everybody should never do when they're searching for solutions. And that is, I got on social media. So I got on social media, and on Facebook, I saw a live video that Ariel was doing for her business, helping women all over the world use organic marketing to grow six-figure businesses from home. And underneath her video, I saw comments from women from all over the world saying, Ariel, thank you. Thank you for showing up and sharing what you share with the world. And in that moment, I finally had the light bulb that just went out in my head, because I realized, wait a second, if I was to just make Ariel my assistant and rob her of the entrepreneurial spirit that she has, I would literally be depriving the rest of the world from the gifts that God gave her to shine. So in that moment, I remember running out of the guest room once Ariel was done with her live video and just saying, hey, I am so sorry. I recognize that you have an entrepreneurial spirit just like I do. So in that moment, we asked ourselves a question that literally changed the trajectory of our life. And that question was, how can we take our individual passions and point them towards a unified purpose without sacrificing what makes us unique in the process? So we kind of created our own approach to life, to business.
Yeah.
We have created our own approach to how we like navigate our day-to-day life, our romantic life, our conversations around business, how we divvy up roles, how we leverage each other's strengths. And slowly but surely, things finally started to change. So we went from feeling completely divided to feeling more unified on a day-to-day basis. And we actually had more fun together. We went on more date nights than ever.
Yeah.
We actually worked less. And you want to know something crazy, Kelly? As we were doing all of that, we actually went from completely plateauing in our individual businesses to completely skyrocketing our revenue.
Yeah.
Because what we discovered was most people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that show up in the business. So when we solved what was happening in the household, that had an overflow into everything else. Yeah. So, and then long story short, the way that we've kind of come together and created what we do now is we would go on date nights. And you know how if you go on a date night and you don't post a story of it, it didn't really happen?
Did it happen?
Yeah. So we decided to do that. We would post stories on our social media of our date nights, and people would reach out to us asking us, Kyle, Ariel, like, how do you guys do this? How do you actually navigate being two entrepreneurs in one relationship? And we started just reaching out, helping people. And then long story short, after we started coaching a lot of other entrepreneur couples, we've gotten feedback from them saying, oh my gosh, you've done more for us than months and months of counseling and therapy combined.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so powerful. And I love that story. And I think that in all relationships, whether you work together or not, it is seeing those gifts in one another and designing a life with a unified purpose, whether it's inside of a business or not. And I think that's what a lot of people forget in marriage, which you help to remind them of. Now, as you mentioned, obviously you guys coach couples that are building a business on how to have this extraordinary success together building this business. But as you mentioned, a lot of times they come to you with a business problem, but there's actually a personal problem that is causing the business problem, which I laugh because it's like, yes, I see that all day, every day, in my own business with the people that come to us. But so what are some of the things that you help people to reframe in their relationships and how they partner with each other, how they see one another, how they communicate with each other, that helps them go from this to, this in their marriage. And then obviously the outcome of that is their business growing, right?
I would say one of the biggest things that we see with a lot of entrepreneur couples specifically is they kind of come in expecting that solving a business problem will make their relationship better. And so I would say in terms of kind of the mentality or the paradigm shift, it's exactly what Kyle said. It's recognizing that within your relationship, you have to address the things within your relationship in order to see the business growth that you want to see. It's no different than, you will only rise to the identity that you hold for yourself, right? But you'll only rise to the identity that you hold as a couple as well. Like you have your own individual purpose, but you also have a purpose as a couple. And if you try to solve the business problems first, that will sometimes help a little bit, but it's usually pretty short-lived versus looking at how can we make the two of you work together more as a team and more as a unit. And that is going to be very reflected in the results that you see within your business.
Yeah, and if I could just add one thing to that too, a lot of couples recognize over time that the very differences that can kind of cause a little bit of marital tension are actually the same things that are gifts that you can leverage in whatever vision that you're creating. So 9 times out of 10, the things that drive us the most crazy about our partners are the same things that we appreciate that they have. Yeah. So for example, Ariel might not appreciate that I will leave a tornado of open cabinets in my wake. She probably doesn't appreciate that. But what she does appreciate is just the creative mind that is just always spinning that sometimes happens to leave a tornado in my wake, right?
Yes. Yeah. We have this concept. I actually heard it from another podcast many years ago. And it was this concept of ecosystems where everything within an ecosystem is built to work together. And so you can look at your partner in a similar manner of, sure, Kyle leaving cabinets open may drive me crazy sometimes, But the piece of him that drives me crazy in those moments is the same part of him that has the creative ideas and that gets sidetracked because he got so excited about something that he has to go implement it immediately. And so it's being able to look at both things as having a light side, but also a dark side sometimes as well, but turning your attention to how it actually benefits you, but also benefits the business.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, I think it's very interesting because I think that in marriage, just like in relationships, and I think you could look at this through the lens of team and everything that we do as leaders and CEOs, it's like your perception of expectation from the other person many times is not necessarily constructive, but it's because of your own lack or your own worldviews or, whatever the case. And then they're responding and reacting to that, right? So, many times, when people are talking about a marriage, for example, and people say they want to improve a marriage, they want their partner to change, right? But anyone that's going to ever help you to work on your marriage is going to say, no, like, you have to change. Like it has to come from you. So what are some of the things that you help couples like reframe, building off of like what you just shared? Like, I think that's a great framework, what you just talked about, but what are some of the other things that like you hear over and over again, from people that you have to help them reframe to like get out of their own way so that they can start growing as a couple together?
There's a lot of different things. And I'll just, one that we see all the time is we have couples that work with us that ask us, how can we disagree with each other without one person feeling attacked? So I think this is a perfect, example of what you're talking about, Kelly, because a lot of times we as individuals will carry experiences from our past into our conversations with our significant other, and it drastically impacts the frame in which we're looking at a conversation. So for example, for Ariel, she grew up in a household where people would get in a fight, and if her parents would get in a fight, their way of coping with that was to just not talk to each other for multiple days. Whereas for me, I come from a completely different background where me and my family would fight 1 minute and we would just make up the next minute and just act like it didn't even happen.
Took me a while to get used to that one.
So what we see with couples is that depending on how conflict was modeled to us as children, that will impact how we have day-to-day business discussions. So a lot of what we will teach the couples that work with us is how to have a discussion about business, but removing that frame of what we are carrying from our childhood into the discussion. So now, to give Ariel and me as an example, if we're having a discussion, Ariel knows in the back of her mind, okay, if Kyle disagrees with me, it's not that our relationship is over and everything is over and we're not going to talk for the next couple of days. It's just we're just having a mild disagreement about business.
Yeah.
And I know that too. As I'm communicating with Ariel, I will reassure her and say, hey, no, this adjustment that we're making to our email campaign, it has nothing to do with our relationship. It has nothing to do with, the health of where we're going in our marriage. It's just simply a business discussion. So for a lot of couples that we work with, we help them reframe this and ask the question, what's right, not who's right.
Yeah.
If we ask ourselves that question in a business discussion, we could focus on objectively speaking, what is the right outcome that we want to come to as a couple without having to bring the emotional baggage into the conversation.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I feel like I coach people as you coach people on, like working as couples. I help people so much with building teams. And I feel like that dynamic in team all the time where the CEO is carrying the baggage of the last person that they hired or fired or had an issue or whatever into this new relationship with this person. And it creates this assumption, which ultimately creates failure in the relationship from the start because of, like you said, the frame of reference that they have from the past that could have absolutely nothing to do with the person that they're dealing with in the moment. And so I think it's so interesting because I feel like everything in business and everything in life is always about raising your own self-awareness, because you have to be able to alter your own perception and projection that you're putting on other people before you can change the outcome that you're getting, trying to work in congruence with them.
And Kelly, if I can, one of the things that Kyle and I often use to check each other sometimes, and what we've taught to our clients is, if we're having we call them heated debates. We don't really fight. We call them heated debates, especially around the business. One of the things that we will check each other with if we start to get a little bit extra heated is, hey, would you talk to a team member this way? And usually the answer is no, right? If we start to raise our voice a little bit or anything like that. And I think the reason why is because, especially when you're working with your partner, we tend to take those that we love most, the most for granted. And so just kind of reframing it as like, hey, you wouldn't talk to a team member this way. Let's make sure we're treating each other like team members as we are. And that usually helps us tone it down and be much more objective about the decisions that we're making as well.
I think that's huge. And that's also hilarious because I've known you guys for years now. You've worked with us in multiple capacities, and I cannot imagine either one of you ever raising your voice. I'm trying to imagine that right now, but that's a different conversation for another day. So no, that's amazing. And so one of the things I would love to explore for a moment here is role clarity. So people ask me all the time, how do you do what you do? How do you, run all these companies and do these things? And I'm like, my husband's amazing. We have 100% role clarity. I couldn't do what I do if he didn't do what he did. And it's absolute partnership between the two of us. Now, I think that one of the things that you guys help your couplepreneurs with, which gets them to really open the floodgates of growth, is also helping them to understand role clarity in their own business. And I think this applies to everyone listening. Either it applies to you if you're building your business with your spouse or partner. It applies to you if you're trying to manage team members effectively. And it also applies to you even if you're an entrepreneur in a marriage and your partner is not in the business with you. So can you guys talk a little bit about how do you help your couples with role clarity, and what do you see the impact on the growth of the business and on their mental health being when you help them to work through those things?
One of the things for us when we were really trying to navigate how we were going to work together, and again, at the beginning, we had two separate businesses. So we were not in business together at this time. But as you said, this applies to any relationship, so to speak, in terms of how you divide roles. And for us specifically, we couldn't figure out how to balance, running the business, but also the household. And with that, what a lot of people would tell us is just to divide by strengths and weaknesses. That was the advice that we kept getting. And to a degree, it was helpful, right? Because, if he's good at something, it doesn't make sense for me to learn how to be good at it when he can execute it a lot faster. But although we're very different individuals, we're also very similar in a lot of ways. So when people would tell us that, we're like, well, what do we do with these areas that we overlap in? And specifically, I recall a time where Kyle and I actually not separated in our relationship, but he was traveling and I was staying home. And that was a really big turning point for how in which we divided up roles between the two of us.
Yeah. So what happens when you and your significant other both have strengths in marketing, but you have overlapped weaknesses in things like accounting or finances
or dishes
or dishes? Yeah. I think, who has a strength in dishes?
I don't know.
But anyways, yeah, what happens? How do we navigate that? So traditional wisdom is to divide up by strengths and weaknesses, but it was kind of falling flat on us. So one time I went to Ohio, Ariel stayed home to work. And when I came home from Ohio, we went to eat at Olive Garden, which is the most romantic place, obviously, in the world. And as we're sitting there having a conversation over some breadsticks, I was asking Ariel, hey, what did you get done? How was the weekend? Yeah. And she told me, Kyle, I got more done while you were gone than when we were working here together. And this was another ego check, but it was a huge lesson, because as I'm sitting there just eating the breadsticks and marinara sauce, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? What if we created a life where we divided up our roles, not by strengths and weaknesses, but by our preferred energy styles and how we prefer to operate? So for us, in all of the couples that we have the privilege to work with, we actually take them through a process to identify not just the strengths and weaknesses, but the different energetic approaches to how they work in their business. So for example, Ariel is the type of person, energetically speaking, who could focus on one task for 3 months straight if she had the privilege to do so. I am the type of person who would go crazy in that environment. I like to accomplish a lot of tasks throughout the day. So when we are divvying up our roles, what we look at is how long will a task take and how quickly can we operate. Ariel is more introverted. I am more extroverted. So I will take more of the extroverted related tasks. Ariel will take more of the introverted related tasks. We have extrovert days and introvert days in the way that we approach and plan our schedule. So I would say that for anybody watching, don't just consider strengths and weaknesses. Look at the different energetic patterns of how you and your significant other as an individual operates, and divide up tasks and responsibilities that way. When we finally started doing this, our productivity went through the roof.
Yeah.
So good. Oh my gosh, so good. Well, I want to make sure people know where they can connect with you, where they can really dive in more. You guys have a brand spanking new podcast so that people can really dive into this world of what it can look like to build a wildly successful business with their partner, with their spouse, and still have date nights, which you guys have the best date night content. I love it. I see you walking. I see the stories of you guys walking. It's so cute. And you're always having fun together. So let's talk to them about where they can tune in and also where they can connect with you to learn more about your coaching programs, your work together, and how you might be able to help them grow.
Yeah. So I would say the best places are, number one, like you said, Instagram. We do stories. We show our date nights. We have a little song. So I'll leave that as like a little teaser. You can check out our date night song. But that's on Instagram. So Couplepreneurs, or the handle is @Couplepreneurs. We also have a Facebook group, a Facebook community for entrepreneur couples. Because again, like when we were growing businesses, we didn't have a lot of examples of other entrepreneurial couples who were doing both business and life together. So we have a Facebook group called Successful Couples in Business that we invite other couplepreneurs into. And then, like you said, we have a podcast. So our new podcast is called the Couplepreneurs Show. You can find it on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And we talk about a lot of this stuff. We talk about what it's like to divvy up roles, what it's like to, align your visions together in a way that one person doesn't feel like their vision is being sacrificed, and all different types of things that allow couples to grow businesses while staying aligned in the process.
So good. So good. All of those links are going to be down below. And before we wrap up really quickly, Kyle and Ariel, you are some of the clients that we cherish and value and have enjoyed working with more than anything. I know you're all listening to the show. We love you too, but we love you guys, Kyle and Ariel, and you've had massive success working in our community and inside our program. So just really quickly before we wrap up, anything you want to share about that? I mean, obviously to everyone listening, these are the kinds of people, amazing business leaders, visionaries, people building extraordinary businesses that serve and impact people. But anything you want to share about that before we wrap up?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many things I can share, but the first thing that comes to mind is every leader needs somebody in their corner who could show them the ropes and show them how to get to the next level in the shortest and fastest amount of time possible. For us specifically, we were very blessed in the business world to have the privilege to work with just about any coach that we wanted. And the reason why we decided to work with Kelly and her team is because we did not see anybody else who has actually done the thing, can turn around and teach the thing, and has an entire team around her that can help us accomplish things that we didn't even know were possible. So when we launched Couplepreneurs, it was a brand new idea that we didn't necessarily know if anybody else would resonate with. But thankfully, because of Kelly and her team, we were able to put the systems and processes and strategies together in order to launch the business and blow this thing up so much faster than I could have ever dreamed of. Yeah. And as we've navigated different challenges after that, like Kelly and her team have always been there for us. So I would say that if anybody is considering working with Kelly and her team, it's probably one of the best investments that we've ever made in our business. We've seen a massive ROI as a result, not just in terms of revenue, but also in terms of the impact that we've been blessed to make as a result.
I would just add to that as well. The care that we experience within the programs that we worked with you in and your team has been just of one of a kind. One of the things that I actually just saw today, I'll just bring this in. I saw that you had a couple of team members that were promoted within the company, which is awesome. And not only do we love them specifically, but Kate specifically, when we had our first live event, in-person event, she drove like an hour just to come see it and support us. And she had no reason to even do it's the little things like that we saw within your team and within how you lead that team that really drew us to you. So.
We also had a really cool speaker at that event named Kelly Roach. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's pretty cool.
Oh, I was an honor to be a part of it. I think the work that you guys are doing is it's so important, and we need to save marriages. We want to build businesses, but we want to keep marriages together in the process. So what you guys are doing is super, super crucial. And I'm very proud to have the honor to have worked with you and to share your message out in the world. And I'm so happy that you just started your podcast, because I know that so many more people are craving this. They want to invest in their marriage and they want to make their dreams come, true, but they want to be together to celebrate when it happens. And you guys are the role models for that. So thanks for coming on the show today. So happy to have you guys. Keep doing the amazing work that you're doing in the world. And I'll see you inside the community soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye.